Are you looking to change out those stoppers on your boring trail bike? Well, the Lewis LHPs have been on this Stumpy for almost a year now, and in this video, I'm gonna give you my long-term thoughts and opinions on what it was like to live with this new brake. All right, so to kick things off, we're gonna head out on the trail. I'm gonna narrate you through some of my favorite trails here at Beacon and kind of give you the rundown on what it's like to ride with these things. After that, we'll come back and go through some more of the finer details when it comes to install, compatibility, and some other key specs, as well as a few issues I ran into. All right, long-term review on the Lewis LHP 4s. $460, 4-piston, very adjustable brake that has definitely turned some heads when it comes to its design qualities, let's say, but I digress. This brake, at the price point, has features that many other brakes at higher price points don't have. Man, it's windy today. You have the standard pad adjust, lever adjust, and then Lewis also has a leverage rate adjust. So basically, wow. Basically what this does is allows you to create a more linear or progressive feel out of the brakes, ultimately giving you a ton of room to get the brake feeling how you want. Overall, unboxing the brake, looking at them, man, they're just a beautiful looking brake. And so far, with a few quirks, have really backed up those looks for a pretty incredible value. From the factory, they come with fins on those pads, and they've remained very quiet. Like, there is no rattle from these whatsoever. Oh my gosh. It's very impressive, but I don't know how needed they are. Woo, we got the gap. Yo. But man, they sure do have plenty of power. So a little bit more on lever feel. Oh yeah. I find these to kind of live between a Code and a TRP DHR Evo. Not the new Pros, I haven't rode those ones yet. But they've got a super light lever feel that is similar to a Code. And I would say power-wise, they're in line, if not maybe a hair more powerful than the TRPs, but I don't have a power meter thing to tell you for sure. Trails like this, where you really gotta modulate your speed, it doesn't take a lot of lever input to actually get the power you want. Oh my God. And this trail specifically, it's a couple steep slabs. You really want to modulate your power, but still have control. Like this, can almost stop before that gnarly little thing. If you're not yet familiar with Lewis, they are a Chinese-based brake manufacturer. In the beginning, there was definitely some controversy over whether these brakes were a knockoff brake or the real thing. Now in their third iteration, Lewis has found a way to patent certain technologies to truly make these brakes their own, and they still do share a similar design to other brakes on the market, particularly the Trickstuffs, no getting around that. But with that said, they do look good, and in this third generation, they have a lot of their own technology and some changes in that design that particularly reflects building this brake from the ground up. When it comes to the caliper, there are 4 stainless steel pistons, all at 17 millimeters in diameter. Weight for one brake comes in at 260 grams, with a single brake lever weighing 98 grams and a caliper weighing 162 grams without brake pads. At $459, they do offer a ton of value when it comes to power and performance, which I promise we will get into a bit later. Up front on the lever, there's 3 distinct adjustments. So you have your standard lever reach and your pad adjustment, and they've also introduced a leverage rate adjustment, which basically allows you to change that brake throw if you want it to feel more linear, where you can really take your time squeezing in on the lever to get to the power, or more progressive on the other hand, which is the way that I prefer it, as it takes less modulation of that lever to get into the power band. To go along with their own brakes, Lewis also offers a variety of rotor sizes to fit your bike's needs. The brake set is offered in only 2 colors, or is awesomely offered in 2 colors. Either way you look at it, 2 is better than 1. You have the silver that I have here, and as well as a black option. So out of the box, the brakes do come pre-bled, which was awesome for the front. The hose was just at the right length. I didn't need to do any trimming, but when it came to fitting them on this Stumpy, I did need to cut the hose as the fitting would not fit through the cable routing ports out back. One cool thing about these is they have a 0 loss fitting in there. So say you do need to route that cable, but you don't need to, say, trim it up at all. Undoing it from the lever body and actually routing it through the bike won't lose any oil, so there's actually no bleed necessary. Speaking of bleeding, when it came to getting these brakes on the bike, it was a bit of a journey. I originally did not order a bleed kit through Lewis and just opted to use what I had in my brake bleed drawer, which proved to not be compatible. In the B-roll here, you'll see where the bleed screw is. It's at an angle, and depending on your fittings, it will contact the actual reservoir. So that was the issue I was running into. The other issue is the diameter wasn't a Shimano and it wasn't TRP. Neither of my bleed cups were actually working with it. Ended up ordering an easy bleed kit, which, side note, everyone should have that because it comes with a ton of fittings and actually works quite well. Once I got that easy bleed kit in, I was able to get the right adapter and get that rear brake bled. Bleeding process is relatively straightforward, I would say. They do have a video on the website and on their YouTube showing what you need to do, and it does require 2 plungers, push, pull, creating a vacuum on each end. It took me 3 tries on that rear brake to get the feeling I was after. I don't know if it was a combination of the bleed kit and the hose leaking, but I just kept getting air out of the system, and I kept getting more air and more air and more air. And after a while, I kind of finally gave up and wanted to go ride. So I ended up leaving it like that. I came back a couple months later to try and get a little bit harder stop on the rear brake lever. I was able to do that with a subsequent 4th bleed. But with that said, I was able to land in a happy spot with where I liked them and my lever position, which we'll get into all the lever adjustments here in a bit. If you're someone that likes to run the brake levers close to the bar, you're going to need to take extra caution when bleeding to make sure you get all the air out of the system, because the way that I have it set up, I have a great bite point and plenty of free stroke for what I like. But if I were to run the brakes close to the bar, I couldn't quite get full pull on those levers before bottoming out on the handlebar. Pretty sure that most people don't run their brakes a finger width from the bar, but if you do, it's just something to keep in mind. Another thing in terms of setup and install I wanted to cover is back here where the brake actually mounts to the post mount or spacer like I have here. Unlike other brakes where the bolt goes in, it's completely flush. On this, there's a little bit of a channel which that bolt sits really nicely into. But if you are running accessories like, say, a live valve sensor, to get enough spacing, you actually have to use the correct spacers, because the standard brake bolt spacers don't actually perfectly fit in there. So trying to get it centered on the rotor was quite difficult, and I was getting really frustrated not understanding what was going on until I realized that washer was bottoming out on the edge of the brake caliper itself. While I'm down here, I wanted to touch on pad rattle, and it's something that out of the box I was a little worried about. They do have these integrated cooling fins, which are not removable unless you pull the entire caliper apart, which, I mean, not super stoked on that. But with that said, they didn't cause any issues. They have a little bit of movement, but the actual pad retaining spring is super strong. When riding in normal riding conditions, there was no pad rattle to be had. So all the adjustments aren't necessarily tool free. While you can adjust the lever blade position like standard brakes with no tools, just the lever or the dial adjusted there, to actually access the leverage rate adjustment, you do need a very, very, very small Allen key. I believe it was a 1.5. And to actually get the adjustment screw to work, you pull the lever in, loosen 2 of those locking bolts, and then that gives you access to actually adjust the leverage ratio dial. With that said, I have 1 stripped screw, and I tried 2 different Allen keys, and that is just one of the letdowns, I would say, is that Allen bolt is so small and so finite. If you get any bit of angle on it, those teeth on those little Allen keys are so soft. Maybe I don't have nice Allen keys. I think they were Harbor Freight, but I'm not gonna go buy a super nice 1.5 mil Allen key to lose. So in future iterations, I'd love to see them upgrade that to at least a 2. There's plenty of space there to be had from the outside. Not sure what's going on behind those, but keep in mind, if and when you do adjust that, be very gentle. Don't over tighten them, don't jam on it. Make sure you get good bite and that Allen key is all the way in. So moving on to the brake pad adjustment, the brakes do come with a custom little Allen key tool that fits in behind the lever blade adjustment, and you can actually dial it in from there. That's something you're really not needing to do out on the trail. So I don't see an issue with it having that tool separately. So when it actually comes to operating the leverage adjustment, I think this is one of the most impactful changes on these brakes and what really separates them from nearly all the other brakes on the market. There are a few other brakes that have something similar, but the way this mechanism works changes the angle of the pivot and thus gives you a more linear or more progressive feel. I have, like I said before, opted for the more progressive feel, and it's something that you can really play around with. There is so much adjustability here, not only to get the levers where you want them. So if you're someone with big hands or small hands, you can really fine tune that lever position. As I said earlier, if you are someone that really likes to run those brakes close to the bars, you're going to be a little bit more limited in where you can have that leverage rate adjustment, because if you are in the linear setting, it's going to pull into the bars even more, so you want to make sure you have a very good bleed. When it comes to fitting the brakes on the bars, the single clamp design is really sleek and looks awesome from this view, but the additional support on the other side limits how much room you have to mount your other controls. I run my brakes very far in on the bars to give me a nice feel right in the center of the hook on the lever. I also ride very on the inside of my grips. Make fun of me all you want, but it feels good. So with that said, my dropper post lever is adjusted in the third position, so it is slammed all the way inside as much as it can, but it is mounted on the outside of the brake. If I mount it on the inside and still have it in the further position, I guess you would say, it contacts my hand when I was riding. There are some adjustments to be had when it comes to setting up your cockpit, and you may or may not have to make sacrifices based on where you like to run your brakes. So one of the downsides with this really cool polished look is those levers are quite slippery when they're wet, especially if you don't have any of that silicone grip left on your gloves, or if your fingers get a little sweaty when you're riding gloveless. Something to take into consideration. It wasn't a massive issue, but it was something that stuck out. You can remedy that by a little piece of grip tape right where you put your fingers. It wasn't enough of an issue to necessitate doing that for my riding style and position. When it comes to overall power on these, there is enough on tap to really get you slowed down, especially in that progressive setting. I did find, as I mentioned on the ride earlier, when I was in the linear and I'd get to that end point and I'd really look for that like, oh no moment, I didn't quite have the power that I was looking for until I got really deep into the stroke. Riding it in the progressive setting pretty much solved that, but there is a little bit of bite left to be desired with these stock brake pads. I actually ended up going to a Galfer pad, and because they use the Hope 2 brake pad standard, those are readily available in most shops, and depending on where you live, you might have to special order them, but they are available, so you do not have to stick with the Lewis branded pads. With that said, the Lewis branded pads are quite good. They just lack the initial bite and kind of real grabbing power that I was looking for. Power comparison wise, they are not as powerful as Maven's, but have a significantly lighter lever feel. Like, it is night and day. I'd say they are very similar to the old TRP Evos. I've not rode the Pros, as I mentioned earlier also, so I can't compare them to those. But if I was choosing blindly based on brake power, the TRPs have a little bit harder stopping point on the lever, but a very similar modulation feel and overall power band. And I'd say they're quite equal. So as I alluded to earlier, there is a bit of a safety concern when it comes to how you have the brakes set up. I want to definitely give credit to Dale Stone for discovering this. He did a great video when these brakes launched and goes really into detail on a lot of the tech behind them. So if you haven't watched that video and you're looking to buy these brakes, thank you for watching my video, but also go check out Dale's, as he does a really good job breaking down all the technical aspects and more comparisons out on trail as well. But with that said, depending on where you have the leverage rate dial adjusted and your lever reach dial, there is contact with the reach dial and the lever. So basically, if you are pulling in on the brakes and you have it set up in the certain way, the lever will actually bottom out and you will not get full stopping power. Say the position in which both of those adjustments need to be in to make that issue happen is not a common place to set your brakes up. but that doesn't mean there aren't people out there that like to run their brakes like that. So in setup, make sure you do some test pulls that you can get to that final bite point before actually heading out on trail. And again, thanks Dale. Hopefully we save some people some hospital visits and close calls. So when it comes to the brake rotors, I have the 203mm option. Through the entirety of the test, I didn't do any truing and the rotors have remained straight. Kind of nothing remarkable or crazy here. They do what they're supposed to do. They haven't glazed over. Yeah, really no issues to report there. All right, so some final closing thoughts. When it comes to looks, I think these look pretty sweet. I'd love to see an option for a shorter lever, just to kind of make it look a little neater. It is a long lever, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, just depending on how you have your levers set up and where your brakes are on the bars. Like me, they're very far inside, and for me, I just love to see a Shimano length looking lever. So Lewis, maybe make some lever options for us. When it comes to value on these things, 459 bucks, I would say it is a good value for the power, adjustability, and looks you are getting. When it comes to power versus dollars, it is going to be hard to find something at this price point with all that adjustability and the power it does have on tap that beats it. I mean, it is a really good brake, and I wanted to take a very long time to do this review to make sure I put it through 3 seasons, to take it to bike parks, take it on trips, travel internationally where I may or may not be able to get parts. I wanted to see how reliable these things are. And on that, you can order spare parts on Lewis's website. They are growing their dealer network. Here in the States, it is smaller, so they are harder to come by, but you can order directly online. And when it comes to customer service, I have a spoof Instagram account that I have some general pictures up that doesn't really show my face. I messaged them and got a message back within 24 hours. So as a brand, they are responsive, which can't necessarily be said at least on social media for many other brands. I'm sure if you email, and there is contacts for other brands out there, of course, but when it comes to just quick online access to a question, they were responsive, and that's really cool to see. So as I was reviewing my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything, of course I did. I guess in this entire review so far, I haven't mentioned that they are a mineral oil brake. So on their website, Lewis does not specify what mineral oil they take. So with that said, you should be safe with most oils. I would say stay away from Shimano's new low viscosity oil, because that oil in particular has a specific seal compound. So I wouldn't use the new Shimano oil, but you should be good with just standard mineral oil. That is something I'd love to see Lewis specify on their website. Additionally, they have a bunch of spare parts on the website, from brake adapters to the SRAM matchmaker kit, which in my case would make the cockpit look a little better and get, you know, one less clamp on the bars, which I think is pretty cool. And both of those things are color matched. When it comes to brake pad options, you have 2 compounds. You have a semi-metallic and a sintered metallic brake pad. The semi-metallics are more for cross country and light trail, whereas the full metallics are more focused on enduro and downhill applications, and that is the brake pad the brakes ship with. So who are these brakes for? Well, I think these are for a variety of riders. 1, if you are looking for some more bling, it's an easy option. I mean, they look sick. 2, if your bike comes with, you know, lower spec OEM brakes that you're looking for an upgrade, maybe you've had the bike for a few years, start to hit bike parks and really need more power, they are for you, and they're going to be a great upgrade. I would say for a racer, it is something that you can look into, but if you're very particular, as most racers are, you're going to need to spend some more time and attention on that bleed process to really get the feel you're after. I thoroughly have enjoyed them. I've not had any major issues other than some of those setup woes that I experienced when first putting the brakes on the bike, but since they've been installed, they've remained reliable, powerful, and have been problem-free. I really appreciate Lewis being very generous with letting me take my time with this review to really be able to put these through the paces and give you my honest feedback. And if I didn't like them, I would tell you, and I don't like them in linear. Like, I really don't. They're a totally different feeling brake when you are in that progressive setting. It's just not for me. And if you are someone that likes a more linear feel, it might be right up your alley. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so, as it really helps us continue to grow and bring you more reviews like this. This is not a paid feature, any sponsored content. Lewis did send these brakes out, and I hope I get to keep them because I want to keep them on this bike, but that's besides the point. The way we generate revenue is from your views and the ad dollars and brands that do support us at our shootouts and bike tests. So as I said before, please subscribe. It really does help us out. Until next time, we'll catch you out on the trails.